What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, talking today about two very big stories, which is that we have a first real leak about a PlayStation 5 Twisted Metal game, which does sound incredibly good, and additionally, we have a couple leaked screenshots for a new Armored Core game. Now, I love some mech combat, so I'm going to risk it and show you the freaking details myself. Now, real quickly, I was incredibly sick last week, which is why there wasn't a lot of uploads. Thank you everybody for the well wishes and the good vibes. I'm glad to be sitting up and able to talk once again. I love you very much. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a giant like and please subscribe if you haven't already. But now, let's begin with the talk of Twisted Metal. Now, this series has always been one of the more interesting ones that's owned by Sony because we haven't seen much of it, despite the fact that this really established them in the 90s and the early 2000s. We haven't seen Sweet Tooth in his game like quite a bit. Like, it's kind of strange the fact that for such a dark, easy fantasy game, something that seems like it would be a multi-million-dollar seller, it's kind of been absent since they did that reboot back on the PlayStation 3. But there's been some rumblings about the fact that this is because Sony themselves, they're not sure how to handle it. They want to make sure that it's big and it's high quality, but how do you make something this freaking messed up in 2022? Well, now we have some details on that. So this is an article that's over on the Video Game Chronicle, and essentially what it's talking about the fact that is that there's been some talks that originally Lucid Games was working on this project as of early last year. So this Twisted Metal reboot, the whole idea about it is to basically restart the entire Twisted Metal saga. You can bring back fan favorite characters, the craziest cars, the best arenas and stuff like that to have some real vehicular carnage once again. Well, everybody knows Lucid Games specifically for their game Destruction All-Stars, which came out last year, and to be brutally honest, Destruction All-Stars sucked. Like, I try not to be rude, but the game is extremely bad. The controls were not very great, the character design was incredibly freaking bland, and the game died incredibly quick. Basically, everybody who was dumb enough to install the game deleted it in a hurry because the game itself just isn't very fun. It didn't have that real appeal to keep you wanting to log in and blowing up the competition. Well, what the leaks were saying last year is that Sony originally wanted them to make it because they saw the potential of them. They saw the fact that even though that game wasn't the best, they thought that maybe with the right toolkit, with the right existing universe, they could make a good Twisted Metal. Well, according to the leak today, they have been officially pulled off the project. Video Game Chronicle has been told that the project has ceased development at Lucid, and according to sources, Sony has instead decided to move the series' revival to a first-party studio in Europe. Now, this seems like a tiny detail, but to me, the reason I'm actually very, very excited about this is that it says something very, very specific, which is the fact that clearly Sony cares. They want to get this right. Let's face it, Sony realizes right now that if they screw this up, Twisted Metal is probably going to be dead forever. It has been so many years since a lot of people have even tried to play Twisted Metal that if this game comes out and it's as boring as that game was, like, they'd be screwed. If this was another Destruction All-Stars style project, it would completely kill Sweet Tooth and the entire saga before it has a chance to even come back. Now, part of the reason this is incredibly interesting is because we really just got to see Sony come out and themselves talk about it a couple days ago. So recently, just last week, there was talks about it on the stage of CES 2022. So basically what this was is the Consumer Electronics Showcase. It's sort of their way of coming out, and this is mostly a technology conference. It's where all the big people come out and talk about the new hardware and technology they're trying to invent for the upcoming years. But what Sony decided to do is sort of take a chance to talk about their PlayStation division, and one of the things they said is that the Twisted Metal TV show is coming. It's still in development. There's some interesting talk about the fact that David Mackey, or I'm sorry, what's his name? Anthony Mackie, the guy who played Falcon in the Winter Soldier, he's going to be playing the leading role, which is very interesting. This is an official piece of art, though. It's interesting to see like new Sweet Tooth art in 2022. So all the talks are the fact that they want this game to come out at the exact same time as the television show. So we're going to have this new game and this new show to just try and advertise for each other. Now, I'm excited for this, but I think it comes down for a big degree to the fact that there's been some rumblings about the fact that right now Sony has this very specific goal in mind, which is long-term quality. There's been a bunch of talks both internally and externally about the fact that they want every single exclusive game for the PlayStation 5 to be a 90% on Metacritic or above. Now, the point of this is to basically make it where when you buy their games, you're going to want to keep talking about them. And I think that part of this is because since they know that there is such a scarcity of the PlayStation 5, a lot of people are still waiting to get the next generation of PlayStation. Since so many gamers are just stuck right now waiting for that next big taste of Sony, it feels like the whole point of this is to make it where whenever you do eventually get a PlayStation 5 or PS5 Pro, if that ends up existing in a couple years, I think the whole point is that every gamer will want to buy every single game. If everything has like a 95 on Metacritic, you're going to go out and buy it. So I think that's the idea, is that they're going to have that long-term brand appeal if they make sure that every game is as good as possible. Now, I find it interesting, but they decided to end this article off with a quote by David Jaffe. David Jaffe, personal friend of mine, really, really cool dude. He is the inventor of God of War and Twisted Metal back in the 90s and the early 2000s. And he basically says the fact that Destruction All-Stars, it wasn't a game that was sticky enough. It didn't really have that grabbing appeal that would make you want to play more than just a couple rounds before you delete the game. Now, I like this. He says, you need a smart designer to sit down and understand the pros and deficiencies of Twisted Metal. Now, this is such a fascinating concept. Twisted Metal, even if you do love the series, in the past it had flaws. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what form they choose for it to take going forward. Now, the other thing I want to talk about today is actually Armored Core. Okay, so if you've never played Armored Core, these games have not been around for a very long time. The last official Armored Core game came out 9 years ago, which is completely bonkers to think about, and there's a very specific reason for that. When you picture From Software, what comes to mind? Probably things like Bloodborne, Dark Souls, Demon's Souls, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, or now, in the more current tense, things like Elden Ring. Now, I think that makes sense. Those games are not just fun, but they're incredibly mainstream. Everybody now thinks about difficulty and challenge and really cool world design because of From Software. Well, now what's funny is that they originally got famous because of their robot series, Armored Core, which were their very, very great, very, very well-refined projects. And now it seems like they're coming back. Now, I want to show you something. The screenshots I'm about to show you look a little bit weird, and there's a reason for that. So essentially, there was this secret, huge survey that was sent out to some gamers, and in it, it talks very, very explicitly about this new Armored Core project, talking about the planet it's going to be on, why these robots are fighting, and they actually say what's most interesting to me, that Hidetaka Miyazaki, the guy who actually is in charge of From Software, the dude who's directly responsible for the amazing polish of Dark Souls, he is going to be in charge of this new robot combat experience, Armored Core. That detail alone just really gets me excited for the future of Armored Core because I just love Miyazaki's work so freaking much. But I want to show you the screenshots that have been leaked. So they look a little bit funky, and I'm probably risking it even showing you these screenshots, but basically what happened is that within the survey, there were these pictures of the game itself, but apparently what happened is when you were taking the survey, your own screen name was across the screen to make it where people couldn't try and leak this, but somebody managed to scribble out their name and release them. And as you can see, this game looks fantastic. Like, actually seeing these screenshots definitely makes me think this is probably going to be a PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X exclusive, and of course PC as well. But my thought is that this seems like it is going to be a next-gen only experience. The size, the scope, the lighting, like this looks really, really good. But part of the reason I believe that is these big, huge scenes of flying around, these gigantic cityscapes. This seems like a different generation of Armored Core. I was playing Armored Core back in the day on the original PlayStation, and let me tell you, that game definitely required you to have a very good imagination. Like, a lot of times, they had to put heavy fog effects, crazy dark screens, they had to do some real visual trickery to make the game seem bigger than it actually was. It seems like now, technology has caught up to the ideas of Miyazaki. We're finally going to have a chance to see the full glory of Armored Core as it's always been intended. But what do you think about this stuff? Is this cool to you? Is this just a bunch of malarkey? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And seriously, much love to everybody who's been sending me good vibes while I was sick. God, it sucked to be stuck in bed. I still can't breathe particularly well, but I'd rather be sitting on camera talking to you guys than just sitting in bed sipping a bunch of soup. So much love. Thank you for watching this video. If you could please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Oh man, my poor lungs.